We're on a mission as a company to help brands grow in this AI era.
The biggest thing that matters is your appetite for learning and where you can get that in a work environment.
How do you succeed in this role when we are kind of overwhelmed with males in our community?
Just be myself and speak my mind and be a part of the conversation.
This helped me because the first step for me was to understand what I wanted to be, and then everything else became easier. I just had to go get it. Always take a seat at the table, not the side seat.
We are so thrilled to have hosting all of you tonight for Quantcast's first Girl Geek dinner. My name is Dorothy Tse, and I lead product management for our advertising solutions here. Hopefully you had a chance to mingle a little bit and do a little bit more networking. I certainly did. It was just so fantastic to get to know some of you here and your like-minded interests as women all together in a single room, so it's really fantastic. We have a number of exciting talks to share with you today. And up first is Esther Hsu talking about delivering ads with machine learning. And then we'll have Malvika Mathur speaking about what her experience has been like transitioning from a corporation to a startup. And then we'll have Brittni Gustaf talking about what it's like to hack into the customer experience. And then followed by Simpson to talk about how a small team can impact an entire industry. And this is the GDPR piece. And then we have, last but not least, Disha Gosalia speaking about her experiences of how she navigated her career as a shy engineer. And then we'll close with some Q&A for all of the speakers and continue with more networking and drinks if you're still up for it. All right. One of the things I'd like to do first is to give you a quick intro on Quantcast. So here at Quantcast, we believe that AI will fundamentally change every company, industry, and customer experience. Well, that's not something to fear because in the 21st century, AI is more designed around how to complement and boost human learning rather than replace it. We're on a mission as a company to help brands grow in this AI era. And the way that we do this is we help brands and marketers make sense of all the data that's out there to understand and make smarter decisions faster. The way that we do this is that we started in 2006 as a company as an audience measurement platform, helping online publishers understand their audiences as well as their web traffic. This is called our Quantcast Measure product. And over the years, our technology and our business has grown, and we now measure over 100 million web destinations across the globe. And some of those web destinations include what you're seeing here on the screen. Our technology tracks things such as site visits, keyword searches, content categories, just to name a few. We process over 30 petabytes of data in a single day. That's kind of hard to quantify, so I was trying to figure out what is a good way to give a visualization of that. That's essentially, think of 600 million four-drawer file cabinets filled with content. So it's a lot of data, but many people say they have a lot of data as well. What we're particularly good at is our ability to make sense of this data. We've been working on Q. It is the world's largest AI audience behavior platform for the open internet. We utilize the Measure platform data to help us drive predictive models as well as AI optimization to score audiences in real time. And as a result of that, there are several capabilities that we provide as a suite of solutions for brands and marketers to help them with growing their business. First, we offer real-time audience insights, and these help to uncover who our marketers' target customers are, as well as what motivates them and how to influence them. We also provide predictive targeting, and our predictive targeting allows us to target the right audiences at any point in their user journey, even before they're in market. And then we also have comprehensive measurement. So this is our ability to, in real time, share audience level and campaign level insights that inform optimization decisions and decisions about how they want to better market to their target customers. This is really exciting stuff for our 700 plus employee base here. We're a global company. We span over 10 different countries and have 20 plus offices across the globe. And we are also hiring, so definitely talk to us at any point. And so first up, and so thank you so much for listening, and again, thank you all for attending today's Girl Geek Dinner. First up is Esther Hsu. Thank you.
Hi everybody, again my name's Esther and I am a staff software engineer on the targeting team here at Quantcast. And today I'm going to talk to you about how we use machine learning here at Quantcast to specifically in the context of our ad targeting product. This will not be a lesson in machine learning, and I'm sorry if you were expecting that. So what do we use machine learning for? We use it to reach a specific audience. So each of our clients is running a display advertising campaign, and they all have a specific goal in mind. So that goal can be anything from raising brand awareness or driving certain actions like clicks or purchasing products or anything like that, right? So we use machine learning to help our clients target the right people at the right time in order to accomplish that goal. So for you to understand what it actually means for us to target people, you need to understand what real-time bidding is. So real-time bidding, or RTB, is a mechanism to deliver ads by auction, individual, like on an impression by impression basis. So impression meaning like an ad view. So with real-time bidding, we can target people at an individual level, and we can also buy impressions at an individual level. So hopefully this illustration I'm going to go through is going to clarify what that actually means. So let's say you're this little gray stick figure, and you go to a website. A lot of things actually happen before you see an ad on a website. And the first thing that happens is that a request is fired to an inventory supplier. And what this inventory supplier is there are several inventory suppliers out there. Some examples are like Google, AppNexus, PubMatic. But what happens there is basically a milliseconds long auction where the inventory supplier asks all of their bidding partners, how much are you willing to pay to show this person an ad? So what happens is they send out bid requests to all their bidding partners requesting a bid. And Quantcast is one of those people doing the bidding. So this is a blind auction, meaning that none of the participants know what the other people are bidding, but everybody sends back their bids, and just like any other auction, the highest bid wins. And then the inventory supplier will then choose that ad, and that's the ad that you end up seeing. And a lot of people are surprised that this happens because it happens in literally 10 milliseconds, so you probably have no idea. So how do we actually use machine learning to do this well, right? The part that machine learning has in this is that we need machine learning to understand how valuable each one of these bid opportunities are. So we use machine learning to basically come up with an optimal price. So what this means is that we train machine learning models and we use them in real time to understand how we should price each bid. So what does this model training actually look like, and what are these models trained off of? Like I said before, all of our clients have a specific goal in mind with their advertising campaigns. And usually, in the most common case, they're trying to drive a certain action, which a lot of times it was represented by a site visit or like a certain page. So for example, like a shoe supplier or shoe company might want to drive shoe purchases, in which case they would choose like the thank you page or the shopping cart, which indicates that someone actually bought a shoe or expressed interest in a shoe. Or an insurance company might choose the request a quote page. in any case, the client will tag the page, and in that way, we can then label our data. So our data, like Dorothy was saying, comes from our measure network, which is made up of more than 100 million sites. And from that, we have this really rich data set of user behavior and really interesting things that we can actually then label as converters and non-converters, or the baseline. And then this is very simplified, but then we run a supervised learning algorithm and we produce a model. And that model will then tell us, what does someone who converts actually look like? This data that we, like Dorothy said, we process about 30 petabytes of data a day. A lot of that is because of model training. We built infrastructure to train thousands of models a day, process, again, lots of petabytes of data, and that way we have up-to-date models for all of our clients at all times. So now I'm going to go over an example of what a model actually looks like. We train a lot of different models, but this is just like a very old example with a very curated set of features. But basically, this is an old model that we trained for an online dating service who was a client of ours. So you can see that the green coefficients correspond to features that mean that you're more likely to be interested in an online dating service, and red ones mean you're less likely to. So you can see that a lot of these are actually very intuitive and make a lot of sense. So for example, obviously, if you're looking for online dating, you're probably gonna register for online dating. And if you're looking for baby care, you're probably too sleep deprived or too busy to care about dating. But some of them are a little less intuitive, right? Like fantasy sports. Does that mean you're single? I don't know. And if you like books, maybe you would rather meet people in different ways. I don't know. But the point is that thank you. The point is that even if you're an expert in your product or your market, machine learning is going to pick up on all these signals that no one would normally be able to find. And normally models have millions of features. This is just like a very curated set. So how do we use this model in real-time bidding? So when we get this bid request from the inventory supplier, we have to retrieve the user data that we have for this particular bid request, featureize it, and then basically score it against the model. And from that, we can calculate basically a number that tells us how likely is it that this person is going to be a converter or someone who's of interest to our client. And then based on that, we can calculate a bid. And I realize that's very simplified, but on very, very simplified terms, the bid is calculated from both the score and also several different control signals that we have, which indicate how much budget the client needs to spend and things like that. But very simply, if you're more valuable, we'll bid higher. And also, this entire process, again, happens in less than 10 milliseconds. And we do this for about 1 million bid requests per second. So that's kind of like an overview of what happens right now. So what are we working on in general, or what are we continuing to work on? Scalability, obviously, always an issue for any engineer. How do we make sure that we can do this for more clients, more data, more complex models, or just more bids? And then also, ad tech is a very dynamic industry. It's relatively young. Things that our clients care about from one year might be different the next, and because of that, we have to adapt quickly. So we have to always be updating our models to be optimizing for the things that our clients care about. And even besides that, if our clients care about multiple things, how do we make it so that we can optimize for different goals, balance those against all the constraints that we have as well? And that's it.
Thank you, Esther. That was a great primer on machine learning at Quantcast. So next up we have Malvika Mathur, who's going to talk to us about her experiences moving from a large company to a smaller one.
Hi guys. Before I start off, I just want to say I'm really nervous, so if you don't get me, that's not my fault. All right, so I know working in the tech industry is hard, right? Like the long working hours, keeping up with the latest technology, all that weight that you gain from eating the free food, right? So, I did. So, hi, I'm Malvika Mathur, and I'm a senior software engineer here in the data platform team at Quantcast. And today I'm sort of going to talk to you about my journey of transitioning from a big company, corporation, to a startup. And I'm hoping by the end of this talk, you guys can take away some pointers on what you can do to evaluate the right work environment for you. And that can be even within the same company that you're at right now, or somewhere else. So where was I before this? I joined Quantcast January 2017. But before that, I was working in Microsoft for 5 years in the India headquarters at Hyderabad. And I joined as a 21-year-old, right out of college. And I was like, damn it, that's it, I'm done. I've accomplished everything that I need to, right? I was so happy with myself. But the 21-year-old me was like really naive as well. So the first 2 years at Microsoft were really great, right? So they had this program where they gave you the opportunity to go between to go in different teams and like different business units and sort of get like a feel of what it feels like, a feel of what it is to work in these different roles. So I got the opportunity to work as a developer, I got the opportunity to work as a tester, I got the opportunity to work as a program manager. But then I decided to work as a developer, continuing that, because I really like problem solving. So I joined my new team and I'm there a few months, and then my then manager comes by and he's like, hey, we have this project, would you like to join? Like, yeah, sure, secret project, why not? So the task for us was to sort of like reinvent the entire calibration process for the entire company. Like, okay, how do we do that? And the other thing that we had to do was we had to deliver this in a really, really short time. So that meant like for the next 3 months, we were working nights and weekends and everything, and it was super exhausting. But the good thing about that was that it forced me to have like a really steep learning curve. So for the next 3 months, I was working with great engineers, and I was working on the latest cloud technology that Microsoft had to offer. It's like, awesome, this is great. But then, early 2016, my husband and I decided to relocate to San Francisco. I was like, well, okay, Microsoft has offices here, there are teams here, I'm just gonna stick and move to one of those teams. So I was in talks with recruiters and figuring out what I need to do next, and then I decided to talk to one of my mentors. And he asked me something really important, something I never thought I'd ask myself. He asked me, why do you want to stay? I was like, why is that even a question? It's my dream company, the pay is great, all my friends are here, I like the work. Why would I want to move? But then he asked me again, why do you want to stay? Then I thought about it. It turns out the answers for both these questions are not the same. I thought about what I'd done so far in Microsoft. I thought about if I moved to a team here, what would it mean for me? And I realized that it's going to sort of slow down my growth trajectory. And it's something that's really important to me. It's great to be learning new technologies, but I realized that as a developer, that's not all I wanted to do. I didn't want to just go in and write code. I wanted to do something more, contribute more in the work that I do. And suddenly, life out of Microsoft sort of became like an option. Since I was moving to the Bay Area, working at a startup was suddenly on my short list. So I started looking for jobs. And looking for jobs is hard. It is exhausting. And I realized that subconsciously, that was one of the reasons I didn't want to move out. Like, I was in a stable job, I was comfortable, I had my friends around. I didn't want to move because of that. But in the whole process of not looking for a new job, I ended up ignoring the whole process of what's right for me in my career at that point. So I started to evaluate that, and I started to sort of like give that a lot of focus when I was interviewing at all these companies, right? Like, they're asking me questions, but I also made sure that I was asking these guys the right questions as well. Because I wasn't that girl anymore who joined a big company and was excited with any project. I wanted to sort of do more things, and I wanted to make sure that wherever I went, I got those things. So whenever I'd go and talk to these people, I'd try to check in on like, hey, what's your technology stack? Am I gonna learn something out of that, right? What are the sort of projects the team is working on right now? What are the sort of projects that they're gonna work on later? What's a big problem that the team's trying to solve for the company or the industry that they work in? And as I started asking these questions, I realized that I had a sort of leaning towards working in a startup environment. I think that's something that's really important. Whenever you're trying to find a place that you want to work at, it's really important to sort of know what challenges you and what excites you to work there. And that's how I ended up at Quantcast. So yeah, I joined Quantcast January of 2017. The last year and a half has been a roller coaster. I like roller coasters, but it's one of those Six Flags Magic Mountain types. Well, initially when I joined, right, I had this really bad habit of just comparing everything that's done here with how I used to do it in Microsoft. I do that sometimes still, but I try not to as much. And the more I compared, I realized that there's a pattern. And the pattern is that in these big companies, particularly like what I was doing in Microsoft, work's more divided, right? Responsibilities are divided, teams are more siloed. You know exactly what you're supposed to do. So when I'd go in as a developer, it would be like, hey, these are your things to do today, and you just do that and walk out, and that's it. But here, I was involved in stuff from ground zero. Like I was there at the conceptualization of ideas, or while we're building a feature, or while we're doing a system, and then I'll see it through. And then in the end, I'll be responsible for taking care of it when it's there in production. And another thing was the technology stack. Microsoft was all .NET. Here, it's all open source. I mean, the first day I walked in, these guys gave me a MacBook. I had never worked on a MacBook before. My first few weeks here were so frustrating, right? And then after that, they're just like, hey, we have some systems here that are written in Ruby, Java, Python. You own them now. Great. It was challenging, scary, challenging, but in a good way, right? So while I was ramping up and figuring out all these differences, I realized that the biggest takeaway is that it doesn't matter how a company operates or what technology stack they have. The biggest thing that matters is your appetite for learning and where you can get that in a work environment. So, like, in different stages of our career, we have different needs. And it's really important to cater to those needs. When I started off, everything excited me. I didn't care. It's a big company, awesome. But then, as I grew up, I realized that I wanted something more specific. I wanted to do certain things. And I tried to find the right fit for me. So I think one thing all of us should do when you go back today is try to figure out why you are where you are and what would help you make the right career move in the way that you want to go to. And that's something that could be within the company that you're at right now or outside. Thank you.
Thank you, Malvika. That was fantastic. I'm sure there's a few of us in the room who can resonate with a story like that, going from a large company, a small one, doing all the comparisons, pros and cons. So thank you for that. So next up, we have Brittni Gustaf, who's going to speak to us about hacking the customer experience.
All right, hello. So I'm Brittni Gustaf, and I'm a senior software engineer here at Quantcast. And I'm on the measure team. So you guys have been hearing a lot about advertise, but I'm on the other side of the company. So I've been here for just over 4 years now, and since I've started, we've had a lot of changes on the measure team, especially in how we go about creating products and features, how we design them, and then how we actually implement them. And it's improved for a lot since that time. So I'm gonna kind of get into why, like how we've made those improvements, and yeah, bring my leader's knowledge to you guys, I guess. Oh. Okay, so measure has kind of been neglected since I started. We're not the side of the company that brings in the money, right? So like we provide the data that provides the side that brings in the money, but it's really hard to quantify like features that we're doing if it's actually having like an impact on your company or not. So because we were focusing so much on what will make the company grow, measure kind of got passed to the side. We didn't have a lot of like people looking into what features we should have to continue to improve measure. So what we did instead is we kind of came up with what we thought people would want. We didn't really ask them very much what they wanted. We just kind of were like, this would be cool and probably would help. Let's create it. As you can probably guess, that didn't work super well. We spent a lot of engineering time creating products that like no one actually really wanted. And it was pretty disappointing when you spend all this time as an engineer and you're like, wow, I made this, and it's like, wow, no one wants that. And you're like, okay. So the company, soon after I started, was like, all right, we're doing this wrong, we need to change something up. So we did a reorg. And I remember the day after we announced that we had a reorg really well. We had a full day meeting with our new leader of Measure. His name is Sam. And one of the things that stuck out most to me during that meeting was he started telling a story about his acquaintance that he had previously. Don't quote this to him, by the way. I am doing this from my memory from a long time ago, but I think I have it pretty well because it was so kind of terrifying to me. So what he told us was that he had an acquaintance, and what this acquaintance did was he went and spent the least amount of effort he could to create a prototype, and then went out to find customers for his prototype, selling it as a product. And he would be like, here, look at this awesome product we have. And the customer would be like, wow, that's really cool. It would be really awesome if it had this feature. And he'd be like, okay. So he'd spend the bare minimum amount of time implementing that feature into his prototype. And then he'd keep going back to clients and being like, look at this awesome product we have, until he got enough like investment into his product to then actually create the product. And I was like, while he's telling me the story, I'm just like, what is happening? Like, this is super sketchy. Are we going to be lying to our clients here and telling them we have products we don't actually have? Well, he quickly assured me that that's not what our goal was, but that we should have a client-first sort of approach to things where we spend minimal effort, create a prototype, show it to the client, and get feedback before we waste all of this time on it. And it was this mindset that led us to the Measure Hackathon. So how the Measure Hackathon works and how it's slightly different from other hackathons is that we would actually get all of we tried to get our diverse and key clients into the actual office. And we just brought them in, and in the morning we'd spend 3 hours with them, just asking them questions about what they do in their job and how could it be improved, and then trying to come up with ideas for how our software could improve it. So after these 3 hours working with them, you'll probably recognize a lot of these from one of our earlier slides, because they're the big ones, right? So after this 3 hours, they went and got on a bus and went to go do fun client-y stuff. And the engineers got stuck in the office for 24 hours to try and put this idea into an actual functioning-ish prototype, and that is at least demoable. So this creates two different experiences. Yeah. So yeah, the clients come here, they're like, oh, here are my problems. All right, cool, you guys work on that, and we're going to go up and get literally wined and dined and party it up until 24 hours later, which they'll come back, and then hopefully we have solved all of their problems. On the other hand, you have the engineering experience. Not quite as glamorous. As you can see, you get really creative with what kind of seating you're going to sit in. I love this because it's like, how many different seats can you try? But you need to be comfortable for 24 hours, and it takes a lot of work to be comfortable for 24 hours programming. And then you also gain a very unhealthy dependency on caffeine so that you can function throughout the entire time. All right. I don't know who I'm kidding. Like, we all love hackathons, and we all know it. Luckily for us, the company literally butters us up, and they give us tons of stuff while we're doing our hackathon. They're like, we love you guys for working. Here, have all your favorite things. And I feel like they literally catered this food to me, like sushi. They literally bring in sushi chefs, and they make sushi for us. They give us acai bowls, which are like my favorite thing in the world. Pizza, it's like amazing. And they also give us like tons of other stuff, like swag. I was going to wear my sweatshirt because it's really nice, but it's way too hot. And we get massages. But one of the best things that we get is that you really get to know like people who work in your organization that you don't really work with. Like, it's a lot of bonding when you're trying to solve these problems really quickly and you're all working in the same code base for 24 hours on the same thing. And we also like to take breaks, keep the brain lubricated. We've gone midnight drinking, which is always a lot of fun. So the client wins, they get wined and dined. The engineers win, the company's trying to butter us up a ton. And the company wins as well, because we've had a lot of really successful features come out of this. Yeah, so here we have something that came out of our first Measure hackathon, actually. Oh, I forgot to tell you how you win. So the clients, they get a hypothetical amount of money that they can spend on each prototype, so each project. And whoever gets the most money, we actually try and turn into a functioning feature on the website. So this is our first one, and it's one of the most successful products now at Quantcast. People really like it. Yeah. And then if you guys are interested in learning more about like how you should prototype things, be customer first, you can check out our blog post. We have the last 2 years up there, and we have some cool videos that give you like the full feel of the entire thing. Not 24 hours long, just 5 minutes, but yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brittni. I can attest to the comparison of the hackathons here at Quantcast to the hackathons in Facebook, and I much prefer the hackathons at Quantcast. Yeah. So up next, we've got Summer Simpson to talk to us about how a small team can impact an entire industry.
Thank you. You guys still doing good? Yeah. All right, awesome. So we've had a pretty significant success at Quantcast. We've been on a lot of industry news over the past, it's only been 2 months since May, and that's like the marketing story, right? That's like the cleaned up version. So what I wanted to do is kind of give you guys the story behind the story, and that's really the interesting part, and also because I'm like super proud of my team, because they like seriously kicked ass with a really complicated problem. We're going to talk about GDPR. All right, raise your hand if you've heard GDPR. Excellent, that makes my job easier. Cool. So, and I hope you really paid attention as well through the first presentation, because it gave you a really nice clean overview of what the ad tech sort of industry looks like, so you kind of know the area that we're going to have to play with. So, what is GDPR? I'll give you the short version. So it is the General Data Protection Regulation. I have other words that I plug in for those letters occasionally, but that works. So anyway, this is a law that was passed by EU regulators a couple of years ago. It went into effect on May 25th of this year, which was an incredibly fun day for me. It's actually an addition to a previous law called the E-Privacy Directive that was passed a number of years ago. And basically, all together, what it does is it says that companies who access users' devices, and they set cookies, and they collect data on individuals, and they process that data, they have to have consent from users to be able to do that. So when E-Privacy Directive was passed, there was no sort of like definition of what does that consent mean, right? Like what do we actually have to do? So it was open to interpretation. So all across Europe, you see all of these banners that pop up on everybody's sites that say things like, if you continue navigating the site, and often they're like really tiny, like down in the corner. If you continue navigating the site, that means you consent to us using your data for any reason that we want, and we're not going to tell you why or how. And by the way, your firstborn is ours too. So what GDPR did when they realized what was happening, it actually said, okay guys, right, all right, so first, here's some rules around what consent means. It has to be unambiguous. You actually have to have somebody like click and take an action that says yes or no, I consent. So everybody in ad tech, just about anybody on the web, sets cookies. Everybody does some level of tracking. You go to a website now, everybody's got the browser plugins that show you just how many cookies are being set. We're being tracked a lot, right? So if you can imagine, if every single one of those companies individually had to ask a user if they consented or not, now when you go to a website, you've got 50 pop-ups happening in front of you asking for your individual consent. So that wasn't gonna work. And we knew that disruption was going to be inevitable, but this is tied to revenue. So disruption is not an option, right? But neither is business as usual. We have to respect consumer privacy, right? We're all consumers. We value our data, we value our privacy, and it's important that the companies we work for and the companies that we work with do that as well. So we set out on a project to deal with how we were going to deal with GDPR, because we have significant business in the EU, and it was important to us, being a privacy-first company to begin with, but to also address this and stay up to date with the compliance. So we had been working with the IAB Europe, Interactive Advertising Bureau, yeah, whatever, anyway, IAB Europe. They had this working group going for a number of years. It started out mostly with the lawyers talking, right, and trying to debate and understand and figure out what their thoughts were on it. And we kept getting closer and closer down to the wire of May 25th. And then, last minute they pull the engineers in and they're like, hey guys, we need a technical solution for this. You've got 3 months, go. So, yeah, so that was mildly entertaining. So we knew that we needed a solution. That's the solution to every problem. So what we did was we Quantcast made a bet on an industry solution. This was the only way that we were going to be able to prevent major fragmentation in the marketplace, and still, as an ecosystem, be able to work together and at the same time, not just be compliant with the law, but actually really respect consumer privacy. And listen to what their preferences were and actually honor those signals. So a number of companies worked together, a lot of competitors. So not only were we trying to solve a common problem that we all had, but everybody was coming to the table with their own agenda. So it was a lot like herding cats. So when I got pulled into these conversations, I'm a little blunt. I have a little problem with patience sometimes. So I went through 2 of these calls, actually 3. They were happening weekly, same set of people, and we just talked about the same thing every single week over and over again and never made any progress. We had 4 potential solutions that had been proposed, and we were basically debating like the most ridiculous minutia of each one and trying to figure out which one we were going to do. Everybody got impatient. We're like, okay, fine, this Friday, we're going to put it to a vote. And I'm like, no, none of these work, right? They're all awful for some reason. So I went back to my team, and which Brittni was on our team, and pulled everybody together and was like, okay, here's the situation. And I explained everything, pulled our chief privacy officer in so she could answer the legal questions, because I don't have a legal degree. And we basically had 3 days to come up with a better solution than what had already been proposed. And then bring that back to the group, and hopefully they buy the idea, and then we go from there. So this is a team. So we had chief privacy officer. We had one incredibly busy designer, because they always are. We had an engineering lead who also had 4 other teams that he was having to manage at the time. And then we had 4 engineers who also had other work that they were responsible for, and none of them had a legal degree, but had to still be able to understand and operate on that level. So we had, well, the first day was me talking, so really 3 days, but 4 days to get until a group vote was going to happen on this proposed solution. We had one moment of inspiration where one of our chief engineers who we had talked to about the problem was out jogging one day and just had this moment of inspiration and came back in and he's like, I got an idea. So we pulled everybody together. We had 3 days to figure this thing out, and then an hour to present the idea and basically change the future of everyone in this working group. So the way we approach this, and these are kind of the things that I think were what really drove our success, other than the fact that we had an incredible team of just super, super smart people. So we went consumer first. The problem with the working group is they were so tied up in their own agendas and figuring out what they needed to, what they wanted. They were forgetting that it is all about consumer privacy, and that was what we had to solve first. So we did that, realized none of them were doing discovery and talking to consumers or even talking to very many publishers. So I very quickly went out, picked up the phone, started calling people, getting input, and kind of came up with a framework of what was being asked for. We added the context of that, so we all got a crash course in the law and what our interpretation of it was. And then we understood the unique sort of positions of the other companies, because they're stakeholders, we've got to convince them, right? And then we prototyped this thing in just a number of days, just so that we could have a proof of concept. Because talking about something and the architecture of something is not quite as valuable and strong as actually showing someone that this will work. So that's what we did. We presented to the team, and it was like dead silence. And then the leader of the group said, "Do you guys want to vote?" Like, sure. And then like we all voted, and ours won by a landslide. I think we had one person who voted against it, the dude from the Daily Mail. Whatever. So what we created was this industry-wide standard, and which allows all of this ecosystem to talk to each other in the same language. It's open source, which is something that we absolutely demanded because we didn't want to get into arguments over who owned what IP. It was publisher-centric and it was consumer-centric. So the outcome. So today, 2 months since a little over 2 months since the 25th, we have a new industry, right? Consent management platforms. This is this whole new thing. We've got 113 that have launched on the IAB framework, which is what we ended up calling this thing. We've got 400 registered vendors and growing every single day who are a part of this framework and talking to each other and sharing consent. 19% of the top 10,000 US and UK sites now have an IAB compliant solution in place on their site. 45.3% of the tools, actually they have some sort of CMP in place. 45% of those are IAB compliant, and Quantcast has 69% market share of all of those consent solutions in market. That's it.
Thank you so much, Summer. That was awesome. Summer and her team have such great impact on this organization in ways that I wasn't aware, didn't realize would happen. And the biggest impact for me is that I was able to hire one of my most senior recent hires because of the leadership industry impact that Summer and her team did. So he was very aware of the work that we were doing and liked it so much that he joined the company. So thank you for that. Next but not least, we have Disha Gosalia speaking to us about her experiences navigating being a shy engineer. Thanks, Disha.
All right, last talk. And given the topic of my talk, I should start from a point of vulnerability here. I can't wait for this to get over, so as you guys, we can all get back to our mingling. So I run customer support and operations here at Quantcast. And why do I qualify and why am I here talking about this? Growing up in India, when you're somebody who's a straight A student or academically focused, you're kind of placed at a pedestal, and you always make your parents proud, and so it doesn't matter if you're a loner out there. I never realized that I was a shy loner kid. So imagine my surprise when, after I completed my software engineering degree, computer science, and went for my first job as a software engineer, in my first half-yearly performance review, when your boss goes through all the great 10 things you did, but that one area of development that you always think about, he actually asked me, "So are you an introvert? I never see you, walking around the desks of your colleagues or chatting up with them, and you actually don't even talk much in team meetings." And I'm like, am I supposed to talk much in team meetings? Well, I'm new. Should I not be listening more? But that was honestly the first time I realized that my personality did have a part to play, in my career. And fast forward several years, now as I parent two really sensitive kids who, are often called shy and quiet. I grapple with this thought on a daily basis, like how do I raise confident young adults who, can accept themselves as what they are, but at the same time also has this growth mindset. And so today I'm going to go through some of my learnings as I've navigated my career, and hopefully as I share my story, you guys can pick up some tidbits here. So one of my first experiences when I became a new manager, I attended a new manager leadership training, and the instructor actually asked me, and actually the class, to write down your word cloud. What it meant was, what are the qualities that you look in a leader that you want to yourself emulate. And when I wrote that down, how this helped me is I kind of became sure of what I wanted to be, where I want to go. And so I stopped actually feeling bad about traits when I saw in other people that I didn't actually have. And so I think this helped me because the first step for me was to understand what I wanted to be, and then everything else became easier. I just had to go get it, right? So as Gandhi says, you need to be the change you want to be, but then you need to understand what that change is. Actually, before I talk about personality inventory, I'll share the story. There was another incident that was a big learning point for me. I was in a really big meeting with my colleagues, my boss was there, and my boss's boss was there, and we were discussing this solution, in an implementation solution. It was a complex solution, and the person presenting the solution, kept going on, and I didn't necessarily agree with that idea, but being who I was, I decided not to really, call her out in front of everybody, and decided to kind of go, one-on-one later and talk to her about, why I thought this was not a good idea. But when I did that, she actually accused me of being indecisive. She said, "Why did you agree with me in the first place?" And I was really taken aback. I'm like, really? Did I even agree with you? It actually gave me a couple of sleepless nights. And at that point, what I didn't realize, which I realized a little later, was that it wasn't that she was accusing me, it was that my lack of speaking up or lack of objection in that meeting was actually taken as agreement by her. And it was only because we have had different ways of processing information. So fast forward in the same manager training, they made me take this Myers-Briggs personality test, or there's the Myers-Briggs, the Enneagram, kind of the same type of personality test. And my original thought with these was, these kind of pigeonhole you into specific categories, and it's like, do I have to choose between being a compassionate person like Mother Teresa or being a leader like Martin Luther King? Why can't I be both, right? But being a good student that I was, I kind of went with the flow. And what I understood was this wasn't labeling me in a particular bracket, but it was really understanding how I communicated and how can I become a better communicator with my coworkers and my teammates and kind of others in my circle of influence. But that's what it is, right? That's basically all this personality inventory is. So this, going back to that example, this person, the way she processed was she would talk and think while she's talking, while how I processed was I would think and then talk. Like I would have these long, awkward pauses, but she would keep going on and on. And what I realized and actually learned through this process was, I need to just find a pause and then ask clarifying questions, and that's kind of how I would better communicate with her. Now, to contrast that is the growth mindset. I read this really great statement that's made a big impact on me about this contrast theory, right? The growth mindset actually tells you that, do you do you accept yourself the way you are, or do you actually, try to be more than what you are, and constantly evolve and constantly grow? Bear with me for a minute. I want to actually give you guys an example that I read that, again, made a lot of sense to me. And this is about the metal industry and how do they rate the hardness of metals. They rate them from a scale of 1 to 10 from a hardness perspective. So like a diamond is a 10 and a tin is a 1. A copper is a 3. So a tin is the softest and copper is a 3. Now tin and copper are not found in the same vicinity at all. They're like found in a completely different vicinity. Somebody decided to take tin and copper and combine them. You would actually think that that would that would be an average, so its hardness would be a 2. But no, combining tin and copper gives you bronze, which is a 6. So this is what happens, and it's actually called the contrast theory. It creates this unique, magical combination. And that's how our personality traits are. I mean, you could be way over here as an introverted, shy person, or you could be way over here, an aggressive, type A sales guy. I work with sales guys a lot in this job, so I can pull on them a little bit. But if you combine, and while you're right here, try to get a little bit of this side, you can be unstoppable. So, you could be an engineer surrounded by a lot of shy engineers, try to get, more communicator skills, public speaking skills, or even skills to make other people feel special, and, you'll just be going places. This is what Sheryl Sandberg says in her book, Lean In. Always sit at the table, don't take side seats. And it was really important for somebody like me who had a very soft voice when I was in meetings, and if I wanted to say something, I would think, and by the time, sometimes the time's already gone to speak. But when you're in that center stage, people can actually see your body language that you want to say, and can actually give you a way in. So I started showing up in some important meetings where I would know there are a lot of people before time, so I could get the right seat. What this also did was, when somebody disagreed with you, they actually had to look in your eyes and do that. I hate conflict. I don't like that one bit. But when I think of some of the biggest innovative solutions or breakthroughs I've been part of, they've usually been through a lot of intense, even wrenching conflict. And I've learned to put myself in those situations, put your ideas out there, let it be beaten up, and you will learn something great through it. Beth Comstock, who's a leader I really admire, she's the ex-vice chair and CMO of GE, where I was previously before Quantcast, said this: conflict is the primary engine of creativity and innovation, and I've learned to accept that, and however hard that is, kind of let that in once in a while. One other principle I grew up with was, you do your karma and don't worry about the results. Other way of actually putting that is, you can actually outwork anybody else, you can out-prepare anybody else, and that's kind of what I try to do. I try to be double prepared and triple prepared when I know it's kind of my chance to do things that are uncomfortable. Also, when I used to get really flustered when I would be put in a position by someone or in a spot by someone where I had to give quick responses or make decisions quickly. And what I learned through, and this is actually a mentor of mine who helped me through this and coached me through this, is it's okay to ask for more time. It's okay to say that I'm gonna need 24 hours. I need to sleep through this. I need to think through this, and there's no shame in doing that. Don't let anybody else put you on spot and make you, give answers that you're not ready to give. Okay, so let's bring it all together. Find out what you want and just go for that. Always take a seat at the table, not the side seats. Always be prepared, but if you're not, don't, there's no shame in asking for more time. Find a yang to your yin. This is something, again, I've done when I've hosted large events or large meetings, Find somebody who is, you can complement your quiet, thoughtful personality to, somebody's upbeat and funny and loud, it just makes things easier. I don't go to a social gathering where there are too many strangers, without my husband who's a talker, so there's like no awkward silent movements. Though he sometimes forgets when he's talking that I'm even around, but that's a different topic. Right, and lastly, I think if you remember that, all human beings are really at the core alike. I mean, we all like to be respected, and we want to perform in our jobs and want to be heard and listened to. So I think when you remember that, I think everything else is just smaller. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Disha. Appreciate you sharing your story. So right now is time for any Q&A from all of our speakers, any topics you may want to ask any of us. So if you're interested and have some questions, you can come over to the my right side here and ask your questions, and all of our speakers will come up and answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
This is kind of just general to everybody, but like as a female in tech and in engineering and product, what do you feel like is your biggest struggle, and how do you succeed in this role when we are kind of overwhelmed with males in our community?
It's funny, when I first stood up here, I've been in tech since 1994. And I'm looking out over the audience and I'm like, you know what, finally I'm looking at what tech should look like, right? But having been in tech that long, I learned a long time ago to not differentiate. Not even admit or acknowledge that there's a difference, and just be myself and speak my mind and be a part of the conversation. Just don't take no for an answer.
I'll just add, I think Summer's really right. What I'll add is also, I've always had good women role models who helped me, like when I got my first child, how to navigate that and just kind of go through things. And so it's important to, obviously not see yourself as different from a man, but then, we are different. So, definitely try to find somebody that you can follow and who's ready to guide you through some life changes.
So I've been in the industry only a few years, I guess, but I will admit that it actually took me a while to realize what a problem it was for women in nowadays. And once I did, it was actually, again, pretty discouraging, right? Like, you notice all these differences from you to all the people around you, and you kind of automatically see it as a detriment. And I think for me, what made the biggest difference was just having mentors and people who I really look up to, men or women, who really point out all my strengths. And I realized that all my strengths are the things that made me different. As cliche as that sounds, I'm really sorry. It's I hate hearing that too, but it's so true. Everything that makes me different, that people might see as feminine qualities, are what make me a better engineer and a better communicator and a better leader.
So the thing that really held me back at the beginning was the imposter syndrome. I'm sure you guys have heard of it. And I really struggled with that at the beginning. I still struggle with it sometimes now, but at the beginning it was so bad. And it took me a really long time to realize that there are a lot of people who have very strong opinions, and they voice them as fact, but it's not, And you sit there, and always at the beginning I was like, I'm just completely wrong. I don't think this is right at all, but obviously this guy knows what he's talking about. He's so sure of himself. And it took me a really long time to realize that if I'm confident in something, you have to actually bring it up. And then a lot of the times there are other people in the room who will also be like, yeah,
I feel like whatever I want to say has already been said, but I've caught myself in situations where I'm the only female in a team of people or in a meeting, and I realized that nothing is bigger than logic. Like if you have solid points and if you know exactly what you're saying, it doesn't matter what gender you are or whatever else. It just, like, you have a good point, and a good point always wins. And that's about it. Just know that. Sorry, what? Sorry.
Didn't realize we were all going around. But the one thing I will add is that as a female leader, I try to embrace it. I embrace the fact that we're bringing a different perspective that in a very male-dominated industry, and that is an asset to a company. The different ideas that come from like a woman's brain and the types of perspectives that are brought sometimes are very unique and different. And so I encourage myself and certainly others to think about just embracing that diversity.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies.
Sorry, just one other thing to add. I think part of my sort of struggle and journey was I was fighting more to be queer in the work environment. So being a woman in the work environment kind of like took a side stage. So.
All right, thank you, ladies. You guys are all amazing.
Hi.
I'm Shireen, and I'm a co-founder of a startup. We're also only females, so it's really great to see you guys up here. I think all of your stories complemented each other, and it's a very nice, it's a novel of stories that's standing in front of us. My question was more specific in terms of the hackathon. So I'm a UX designer, researcher, and when you talked about the hackathon, it seemed very developer focused. So I was wondering if that's part of the culture here, that the designers are also part of the hackathon, or is it very engineer focused? Because you keep saying the user first, and we're the ones that we're kind of like super obsessed, you know, we read our whole lives about the user. So how does it work here?
Yeah, I should have probably clarified that better. So it's not just engineers, it's definitely product managers and UX as well, and all of the designers. And we actually sometimes we get disappointed if you don't have the designer on your team in the hackathon, because having that designer is like a huge asset, because things that look nice and work well for the user tend to win really well, even in your simple prototype. So yeah, they're a huge portion of it, and they're also a huge portion here at Quantcast at working with the product managers to make sure that the design is what customers can understand. And we've learned that the hard way, because we used to have tests where we would have people run through our stuff, and it was just so painful to be like, just scroll down. What do you want? It's just down a little bit, you know? And people are trying to get to a certain page and they're clicking everything but the button they should be clicking. So yeah, that was a struggle we had, and we've gotten a lot better at that by having both product and design create clickable prototypes, and then have the user use it and then give feedback and then make improvements, which has been really awesome and has really improved our product so far.
Thank you.
And I was going to say that that worked so well in the hackathons that we've actually reorged our groups to have dedicated teams to each product that's made up of a product manager, engineers, an assigned UX person, and a product marketing manager.
Hey there. So the question I have is more specific to Summer's story, but if it makes you think of stories that you want to share because of what I asked, go for it. So my question was about your decision to say, wow, all these ideas suck. I'm going to come up with my own and present it and hope for the best. So what was going through your mind when you made that move? And I guess what kind of steps did you take to, increase the chances that they go for it?
So the options that were on the table, at the surface, all of them were great ideas. But once you scratch below the surface, they all had problems. So for instance, one idea was a centralized registry to store people's permissions. But that would be one company building a massive database that might hold the trillions of records necessary to do it, but all of that data would be in the hands of one company. So that was bad. And then we had one that was this pure, what they called daisy bit, which was, we just passed this information around, right? So what we ended up doing was we took kind of the best of the solutions that fit everybody's needs and were like not quite so controversial, and created what we initially called a hybrid solution. But I mean, it wasn't completely like my decision. I mean, I walked back into the room with the team and was like, all these ideas suck. But you know, it was the team that actually like really got together and in understanding and breaking down each solution, took the best out of each and came up with the right thing that ended up working well for everyone. Brittni, you wanna give your side of it?
I think that the other side of things is that it's really important to bring in other people and get outside perspectives. That was one of the things that disappointed me most about the GDPR implementation, is that IAB and all these people were meeting for so long trying to come up with a solution to this, and all it took was pulling in like more people with more ideas to be able to get the best one. But we spent so much time not getting there because we weren't pulling in like everybody needed and getting all the different diverse perspectives to be able to come up with the idea that was best. So that was, I feel like we got a later start than we should have, because if the correct people had been pulled in sooner, then we would have not had such a stressful time trying to get this done before the law was in place.
Ladies, so thank you so much, and some gentlemen too. Thank you so much for attending the Girl Geek dinner. And we just want to emphasize also that, you know, at Quantcast, you know, our greatest asset is our employees. And there's a bunch of folks around the room that are wearing Quantcast clothes, as well as all of us up here. And we would love to talk to you further about Quantcast. Thank you. We're hiring.